For 8 years, the billionaire watched his son wince. Every doctor dismissed the pain with cold certainty. The mansion held money, but no answers, and his shame grew heavier. A maid's daughter noticed the boy's hand rising to his ear again. Her breath caught as something shifted inside her. She saw what the specialists refused to see. A gray morning settled over the estate. Cold light washed across the marble floors and tall windows shimmered with a dull shine. The mansion felt vast today, almost hollow, like it had forgotten how to breathe. The billionaire sat in his study, shoulders tight, eyes locked on a silent phone. His son stood near the door, small and tense, hand drifting toward his ear again. That tiny movement cut through the room like a blade. The maid's daughter moved quietly along the hallway. She'd been assigned to clean the upper wing, but her steps slowed when she passed the study. She felt the heaviness inside that room before she even looked in. When she did, the contrast hit her hard. The billionaire in his tailored suit, stiff with frustration. The boy frozen behind him, breath shallow. The silence stretched until it became its own kind of cruelty. She continued sweeping, but her eyes returned to the boy. His face tightened each time he touched his ear. A quick wince, a soft flinch. The billionaire didn't notice. He flipped through papers, muttering under his breath, lost in numbers and deadlines. The girl's chest tightened at the sight. She knew that look, the quiet endurance. The world pretending not to see your pain. She moved to the staircase, polishing the banister. The boy wandered out of the study and sat on the first step. He lined up small wooden blocks across his knee with careful precision. His fingers shook. His breath trembled. He pressed his palm against his ear again. She swallowed hard. Something was wrong. Something deeper than silence. She approached slowly, cautious not to break the house rules. Staff weren't supposed to speak to him unless spoken to first. The billionaire had made that clear. The girl hesitated, cloth in hand. She watched him try to steady his breathing. He blinked fast, fighting tears he didn't want to shed. Her heart cracked at the sight. "You okay?" she whispered. Her voice was soft, almost unsure. The boy looked up, startled. He didn't speak, didn't sign, just watched her with wide, frightened eyes. She noticed the redness around his ear, the faint glisten of moisture, the way he leaned slightly to one side as if protecting that part of himself. She knelt a little closer, keeping her hands still. "Does it hurt?" she asked gently. He touched his ear again, smaller this time. A tiny nod followed. She exhaled, slow and steady. She couldn't fix anything. She wasn't allowed to, but she couldn't ignore him either. Footsteps echoed behind her. The billionaire appeared at the top of the stairs. His gaze snapped to her, sharp and cold. She rose instantly, stepping back. His eyes narrowed. "Get back to work," he said. His tone wasn't loud, but it carried weight. The boy flinched at the sound, shoulders tightening. She lowered her head and moved away, but her chest burned. She could still feel the boy's fear lingering in the air. She kept cleaning, kept moving, but her thoughts stayed with him. The silence in the mansion grew heavier, pressing against her ribs. Before she left the hallway, she glanced back at the boy. His hand hovered near his ear again. She inhaled sharply. She didn't know how, but she knew this moment mattered. She knew she couldn't look away anymore. The day wasn't finished, but the shift had begun. The afternoon light dimmed as clouds gathered over the estate. Shadows stretched across the hallways, giving every room a muted, uneasy glow. The maid's daughter moved through the dining room, wiping down the long, polished table. Each swipe of the cloth felt slower than the last. Her mind kept drifting back to the boy on the stairs. His tiny wince, his trembling breath. The pain no one else noticed. She kept working, but the house felt different today. Colder, sharper. Every servant moved with tense precision, eyes lowered, voices locked behind sealed lips. They'd all learned to fear the billionaire's moods. His silence was more dangerous than anger. When he didn't speak, the whole mansion felt like it was waiting for something to break. From the corridor came a quick burst of sound, papers slamming against wood. She froze. The billionaire's voice followed, low but edged with frustration. "Another mistake," he hissed. "Another useless report." Metal clattered to the floor. A pen rolled out of the study and stopped at her shoe. She didn't dare move. Not with him standing in the doorway, chest rising in short, irritated breaths. The boy stood behind him again, small shoulders drawn inward. His hand drifted toward his ear, almost reflexively. Another wince. Another tremble. The billionaire didn't look at him. He didn't notice. He walked right past his son, leaving the boy stranded in the hallway like a forgotten shadow. The girl swallowed hard. She stepped back as the billionaire stormed down the hall and disappeared into the conference room. A heavy door slammed shut behind him. Silence dropped again, colder than before. She glanced at the boy. He pressed both hands to his ear now, his face scrunched with pain, eyes glistening. Her heart lurched. She couldn't stay still this time. She knelt beside him again. Careful. Quiet. "Hey," she whispered. "It's hurting again." He nodded quickly, teeth clenched. Before she could say more, a sharp voice cut through the air. "What are you doing?" The head housekeeper stood at the end of the hall, arms crossed tight. Her eyes were cold, assessing. "You know the rules," she snapped. "You don't involve yourself with him." The girl stood fast. "He's hurting," she said quietly. "Something's wrong." "That is not your concern," the housekeeper replied. "Your concern is scrubbing floors, nothing else." The boy watched them both, breath shaking. His eyes flicked between their faces, full of fear. The girl's chest tightened. She lowered her voice. "He needs help." The housekeeper stepped closer, her glare icy. "If the billionaire wanted your opinion, he would ask for it. Do your job. Stay out of his family." A group of servants passed nearby, whispering nervously. They didn't stop, but she saw their quick glances. The contrast hit her again. This mansion overflowing with wealth, yet no one could offer a small boy comfort. Not even a soft word. As the housekeeper walked away, the girl's hands shook. The boy touched his ear again, winced again. She forced a breath through her lungs. Something deep inside her shifted, firming, anchoring. She looked at him one last time before returning to her work. His pain followed her down the hall like a haunting echo. And she knew, with certainty now, that the next moment she faced this choice, she wouldn't step back. The pressure was rising. The house felt ready to crack, and she was standing in the center of it. Evening settled over the mansion like a thick blanket. The hallways dimmed, the chandeliers softened, and the world inside the estate quieted to a slow, uneasy hum. The maid's daughter finished polishing the last banister in the west wing, her mind heavy with the day's moments. She kept seeing the boy's face, the sharp wince, the trembling hands, the way he tried to hide his pain because no one ever listened. She slipped into the staff kitchen, hoping for a moment of stillness. The fluorescent light buzzed softly above her. A kettle steamed on the counter. She grabbed a cup of warm tea and sat at the small wooden table, shoulders slumping for the first time all day. Her breath eased out in a slow sigh. A soft shuffle entered the room. The older gardener stepped inside, wiping dirt from his hands. He was one of the few staff members who smiled. "Long day?" he asked gently. His voice was low, steady, the kind that felt safe. She nodded. "He's hurting," she whispered. "The boy, and no one does anything." The gardener paused, leaning against the counter. "We've all seen it," he murmured. "But seeing and speaking are different in this house." His eyes softened. "You have a kind heart, but a dangerous one, too." She lowered her gaze. "He keeps touching his ear," she said. "He looks scared. Something is wrong." The gardener sat across from her. "I know," he said quietly, "but the billionaire listens to doctors. Not maids' daughters. Not gardeners. Not anyone who earns their meals here. He let out a slow breath. This place doesn't reward compassion. It punishes it. Her fingers curled around the warm mug. That boy needs someone. He studied her for a long moment. Just remember, he said, helping him might cost you everything. Jobs here don't return once lost. His words settled heavily in her chest. Still, even as fear pressed against her ribs, another feeling rose beneath it, steady, patient, unyielding. She couldn't stop noticing the boy's pain. She couldn't unsee it. Later, she returned to her small room in the attic. A single lamp glowed beside her bed. She pulled out a folded photo of her mother, the tired maid who'd raised her through long shifts and endless nights. Her mother always said the same thing. If you see pain, you don't turn away. You step toward it. The girl traced the edges of the photo. I don't know what to do, she whispered. The memory of the boy's wince flashed again. Her throat tightened. She opened her small drawer. Inside lay simple comforts, threadbare clothes, a worn Bible, and a tiny bracelet her mother gave her before she died. She held the bracelet, letting its weight settle her. The room was quiet, but not empty. The gardener's words echoed. Her mother's voice echoed louder. Footsteps passed outside her door. Slow, unsteady. She stood and cracked the door open. The boy stood alone in the hallway, clutching a crumpled drawing. Tears streaked his cheeks. He pointed to his ear, breathing fast, desperate. The girl stepped into the hall without hesitation. She knelt, her hands gentle on his shoulders. I see you, she whispered. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead to her arm, trembling. In that dim corridor, something shifted in her heart. The mansion felt smaller, the choice clearer. She wasn't just witnessing his pain anymore. She was stepping toward it. Rain swept across the city as the maid's daughter stepped off the mansion shuttle. The sky hung low and heavy, soaking the narrow streets of her neighborhood. Water gathered in shallow puddles, reflecting flickering streetlights and worn brick buildings. She pulled her thin jacket tight around her shoulders and hurried toward the small apartment she shared with her mother and younger brother. The cold bit at her skin, but her mind was somewhere else entirely, still trapped in the same hallway where the boy had pressed his forehead to her arm, trembling with pain. Inside the apartment, warmth met her instantly. A pot simmered on the stove. Her mother sat at the table, shoulders slumped from another long shift. Her brother sprawled on the couch with a stack of schoolbooks, chewing on a pencil. The room was cramped, but it felt alive in a way the mansion never did. Here, people spoke. Here, silence wasn't a rule. It was just rest. Her mother looked up. Long day? She asked gently. The girl hesitated. Then she nodded. She took off her wet jacket and hung it on the back of a chair. He's worse, she whispered. The boy. Something is hurting him, and no one cares. Her mother's face softened with concern. Baby, she said, you know how those rich houses are. You help too much, you get punished. But he's suffering, the girl insisted. He keeps touching his ear. He cries without sound. I can't just pretend. Her brother glanced up from his books. You always try to fix things, he muttered, but the tone wasn't mocking. It was worried. Just don't lose your job over a billionaire's kid. She sank into a chair. Her hands trembled. I don't know what to do, she murmured. Her mother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You follow your heart, she said softly. But remember, following your heart is rarely safe. The girl swallowed hard. She looked around the room, peeling paint, mismatched chairs, cracked windows, her brother's worn-out shoes by the door, the envelopes of unpaid bills tucked beside the microwave. They depended on her job. They depended on her paycheck. But when she closed her eyes, she saw the boy's face again. The tiny wince, the fear, the trust. After dinner, She slipped into her small bedroom. She opened her bag and took out the boy's drawing, the one he'd clutched earlier before he broke into silent tears. The sketch showed a sky full of stars and a tiny figure reaching up to touch them. A small note beneath it read, "Safe." Her throat tightened. She brushed her thumb across the paper, feeling the faint texture of pencil strokes. She began packing, slowly. An extra shirt, her mother's bracelet, a small towel. She didn't know why she was packing. She just knew something was pulling her forward, something she couldn't explain. Her mother stood in the doorway, watching quietly. "You're preparing for something," she said. The girl nodded. "Tomorrow might be different." Her mother stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her. "Whatever comes, you're not alone," she murmured. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, the girl tightened her grip on the bag. Tomorrow waited for her, loud, uncertain, and filled with choices she could no longer avoid. Morning crept in with a pale, washed-out glow. The mansion rose through the mist like a fortress, cold and towering, but something within it had shifted. The boy had been moved to a quieter wing, away from the bustle of servants. Doctors came and went with hushed voices and puzzled faces. They spoke in circles, offered theories, ran tests that revealed nothing new. The billionaire paced the hallway, trapped between hope and fear, his polished shoes clicking against the marble like a restless heartbeat. The maid's daughter watched from a distance, cloth in hand, pretending to polish a vase. She wasn't supposed to be on this floor, but no one stopped her today. The mansion felt uncertain, its rules unsettled. Whispers traveled through the staff like currents. The boy heard something. He reacted. Something changed. None of them understood what happened. None of them knew she'd been there when the boy trembled in the hallway. She kept that moment tucked close to her, heart quiet and sacred. Hours passed. The air felt thick with waiting. The older gardener found her in the courtyard as she scrubbed a stone bench. He crouched beside her, lowering his voice. "The house is different," he murmured. "The billionaire hasn't yelled once today." She dipped the brush into the bucket. "Something happened yesterday," she whispered. "Something real. I don't know if it'll hold." Her hands shook slightly, remembering the boy's silent tears turning to trembling hope. The gardener studied her carefully. "You care for that child," he said. It wasn't a question. "Be ready. Change doesn't come gently in places built on pride." Later, while delivering linens to the East Wing, she encountered the billionaire himself. He stood at the window, staring out at the sprawling gardens with tired eyes. His suit was immaculate, but his expression was fractured, like a man who'd finally seen the limits of his wealth. She tried to turn away, but his voice stopped her. "You noticed him first," he said quietly. Her breath caught. She faced him slowly. His gaze wasn't cold today. It was raw, human. "He reacts to you," the billionaire added. "He looks at you differently. As if—" his voice faltered. "As if he trusts you." She clutched the stack of linens, unsure what to say. The air between them tightened. "I've spent years searching for answers," he continued. "Years believing money fixes anything." He paused, swallowing hard. But yesterday, there was a moment. He heard something. A sound. Brief, but real. Her heart thudded. "He did." The billionaire nodded once. "It means something is changing, and I don't know how to guide him through it." His voice cracked at the edges. "But I think you might." Shock rippled through her. She stepped back, overwhelmed. "I'm just staff," she whispered. "You're the one he runs to," he replied. "The one he calms for." A silence settled, heavy but not unkind. For the first time, the power between them shifted, even if only slightly. By late afternoon, the atmosphere grew warmer. Staff moved with tentative relief. The boy sat in the garden, listening to the faint rustle of leaves, eyes wide with wonder. She watched from the doorway, breath trembling. Life was changing. His, hers, the billionaire's. And though fear still lingered, a new purpose flickered beneath it. Fragile but rising. Something better was beginning to form. The day of the ceremony arrived with crisp sunlight spilling across the mansion grounds. Rows of white chairs lined the garden lawn, facing a small stage framed by tall oak trees. Reporters gathered near the back, murmuring quietly. Community members filed in. Doctors from the hospital stood stiffly in their coats. Staff lingered along the pathways, nervous but curious. Something historic was about to unfold, though no one yet understood its full weight. The maid's daughter stood, near the edge of the crowd, smoothing the wrinkles in her simple dress. Her heart thudded beneath her ribs. She hadn't expected to stand here today. She hadn't expected any of this. Only a month earlier, she was scrubbing floors and praying someone would see the boy's pain. Now she watched him run across the lawn, laughing softly as he chased a drifting leaf, hearing everything, startled by nothing, bright with joy. The billionaire stepped onto the stage, shoulders squared, but eyes soft. A microphone waited at his side, but he didn't touch it yet. Instead, he looked out at the guests, neighbors, foundations, families, staff, and beyond them, the girl who noticed what millions of dollars never could. He cleared his throat. "For 8 years," he began, "my son lived in silence." His voice wavered slightly. "I trusted specialists, hospitals, experts. I believed money could buy solutions, but it bought nothing except false hope." Heads shifted in the crowd. Cameras clicked softly. "There was someone in this home," he continued, "who saw what no one else saw. Someone with no degree, no training, no reason to be heard. And yet, she listened. She paid attention. She cared." His gaze found her again. She felt her breath catch. He gestured toward a banner behind him. The Heart Hearing Foundation was printed in bold letters. "Today, we launch a foundation dedicated to helping children who suffer from undiagnosed or neglected hearing conditions," he said. "Free of cost, accessible to families with nothing but hope to offer." The guests murmured, touched, surprised. "This foundation," he said, "does not exist because of my resources." He paused, letting the truth settle. "It exists because of her courage." He motioned gently toward the maid's daughter. "Her attention saved my son. Her compassion restored an entire life." People turned to her. The gardener wiped a tear with the back of his hand. The housekeeper looked humbled, arms folded tight. The billionaire stepped away from the podium and approached her slowly. "Would you join me?" he asked softly. Her legs felt unsteady, but she moved forward. The crowd opened a path for her, whispers rising like wind. When she reached the stage, the boy ran to her first. He flung his arms around her waist and pressed his ear to her heartbeat. "I can hear you," he whispered, voice warm and clear. Emotion struck her like a wave. She held him close, eyes stinging. The billionaire placed a hand over his heart. "You gave my son his world," he said. "Please help us give other children theirs." A microphone was offered to her. She hesitated, breath trembling, then faced the crowd. "I'm not special," she said quietly. "I just didn't look away." Her voice steadied. "Every child deserves someone who won't look away." The crowd rose in applause, soft at first, then swelling, then thunderous. The boy clutched her hand. The billionaire bowed, his head humbled. The sun broke fully through the clouds, warming the stage. In that moment, the maid's daughter felt the weight of her old life loosen. Not erased, not forgotten, just transformed into something new, something worthy, a legacy born from quiet courage, a future shaped by a single choice to care, and a world where silence no longer meant suffering.